Very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Sauradeep Sarkar, your host for today's webinar. It gives me immense pleasure welcoming you all to the live webinar on the theme of digital transformation. This webinar is hosted by Cyber Media Research in association with IBM. For the duration of presentation, all participants' line will be in listen-only mode. After the presentation, we will be having a question and answer session. Your feedback is very important for us, so kindly submit your feedback at the end of the webinar. Now I would like to hand over the floor to Mr. Anil Chopra, who is VP Research and Consulting from Cyber Media, who will share his insights to the next wave of digital transformation. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for sparing time to join us on this webinar. And we have two sessions today. One is about the next wave of digital transformation, followed by a session on digital reinvention, a masterclass by Ramit Gupta, who is the Associate Partner Digital Strategy at IBM. Now, I'm going to spend the next 10-15 minutes talking about, what's really happening and what's the real digital reality today, and how some of the Indian and global companies are actually going digital, and what technologies to really watch out for in this digital transformation space. Because as you know, digital ecosystem has, altered how people and businesses actually interact. We are seeing a lot of disruption happening all around, with new organizations, emerging and disrupting established players across the industry. So it's obviously natural for and a key concern for every organization today. We need to understand what's happening in the market in order to decide what should be done and how to go about doing it to avoid getting disrupted. So that's what this webinar is all about. And as I mentioned that, after my presentation, there'll be Ramit's presentation and followed by a Q&A session. And I'd request, I think those of you who have logged in from your computers and systems can actually send us questions via chat. And I think the administrator will facilitate people who have logged in from the phone line to ask us questions directly. So with that, I'll just come to my presentation. And, one thing is that, you would already be familiar with, how the SMAC stack, which is social, mobile, analytics, and cloud, and IoT have really been instrumental in bringing in this new digital era. They were the so-called emerging technologies earlier, but today they have kind of, really disrupted how digital organizations are supposed to be functioning. And it's important to understand, the changes that they have brought in, and the kind of reality that they've really brought in. And this is some of our observations, as you can see in the slide in front of you, that there's a traditional mindset that we're still seeing amongst organizations, whereas the actual new digital reality is really, really different. So, one is that obviously you cannot really debate about whether to digitize operations or not, and it's important you have to do it. And one thing that we're seeing is that, traditionally, if companies think that, you don't need to worry about getting disrupted because it's a global phenomena, it can't happen to you. Well, I think the reality is that we are no longer insulated from disruption. And some of the companies that we have seen, digitally led companies like, Paytm, Flipkart, Amazon, Uber, etc., they've already demonstrated how digital can actually be used to do business. There have been enough examples of that, so I will not really get into that. The other thing is that, you cannot just watch competition from your own industry anymore, because in digital age, competition can actually come from anywhere and from any industry. Okay, to give an example, although it's an old one, but look at how LinkedIn is being used not just for socializing, but it's actually being used for recruitment, and how Paytm has been used for e-commerce and digital payments. Although it was just a small wallet player, but see how it has transformed and actually looked at other industries like retail and payments and BFSI sector, banking sector. So the lesson there is that a service that you offer from an overall package could actually be taken up, any one particular service out of an overall bouquet, by an unknown player and delivered with much better quality than what you actually provide, which is the case with digital payments. Now, who would have thought that you can actually make digital payments, small micro payments from a mobile phone, and how easily that has actually propagated and so many people are using it. Essentially, the lesson there is that for the traditional mindset is that IT is not just a business enabler today. IT is at the core of the business. You need to make it a part and parcel of everything that you're really doing. So it must be provided, for the back-end applications, and it has to be integrated across all business units. It is a requirement. It's essential. It's a core. So the other thing is that you need to release products and innovations quickly on the fly, and based on customer feedback, just keep innovating on them, rather than just having well-planned timelines that take maybe a year to bring out a new product, an IT product or an innovation. You need to bring them out quickly, much faster, and then innovate based on the feedback from the customers. There's no need to wait for a perfect product to happen and then release it. So that is the new thinking. Another thinking we've seen is that it's digital technologies are not just a set of tools for running traditional business campaigns, which are to be run as per the requirement, like there's a season for running a campaign, so you do use set of digital tools. No, that is the traditional thinking. You need to look at them as a part of your overall organization's growth strategy, because it's, again, not about just technology. It's not even about social media, mobility, analytics, or cloud that I just talked about in the earlier. Companies are actually globally redefining their entire business with the help of digital, and I will talk about some of them later on. So, that brings me to the next slide about how do you really view digital. Now, for one, it has to be an integral part of your business strategy, where IT would support the strategy with clearly defined business goals and milestones. It has to be led by the business and supported by IT. They would build digital into the processes and have technology supporting them at the back end. The other is to be able to, gauge your digital readiness. Not every organization is really moving at the same pace in digital. So you need to be able to gauge how fast are you really moving and how ready are you. So use any of the available frameworks to pinpoint where you really stand as far as the digital journey is concerned, and how then you should move ahead. You need to have a proper approach, a structured approach to do that. The other is to have milestones. Of course, digital is a journey. So it will not really just get over. It's not like a big bang ERP deployment or a CRM deployment or an application deployment. It's a journey. And that journey, you need to have milestones and that you keep achieving. And as you achieve a milestone, you cannot be content with having completed it. You have to be able to continuously raise the bar, because innovations are happening so quickly that long before you know it, somebody else would have already copied that milestone and moved ahead of you. So you need well-defined milestones that you need to keep improvising on and improving and keep raising the bar. Okay. The other is that business heads have to really understand that. Okay. That what is the value of IT, that has to be understood by the business heads. When both of them are in sync, that's when you'll gain the maximum benefit. So both IT as well as business need to work closely so that they can understand how technology can actually really help them. The other is to treat IT projects not as IT projects, but actually as business projects, because ultimately when you're moving ahead, everything has to do with a business outcome. Now that's how you should approach even any technology-based project, okay? And that's the only way you'll actually succeed. You cannot just consider IT as a project, as an IT technology deployment meant internally for a specific purpose. It has to be having a business outcome. So it's actually, if you look at it, all about technology-enabled business transformation now. Now to illustrate that, let me just give you a small example of Maruti. I'm sure that you all would have heard of Nexa, right? Which is basically something that Maruti started in 2015, where they wanted to redefine the customer experience, and as a result launched the Nexa premium dealership. Now, Maruti Suzuki, as you all know, is a brand which is known to the common man. Everybody knows it, right? And this is exactly the challenge that they were facing, that they had to come out of this mindset to be able to attract high-end customers and change their mindset. Now, these customers are tech-savvy, and they expect digital to be a part of their experience. Therefore, technology, really had a crucial role to play over here. So this is where actually IT actually came in. The overall strategy was to be able to reach out to the high-end segment and to redefine the customer experience, okay? And they had to use IT to make sure that, it was able to do that by ensuring consistency across all the channels, whether it's a mobile, whether it's a website, or even a personal visit to a showroom. The customer had to get a consistent experience across all channels. And I believe they've been fairly successful in that. And seeing this traction, I think they've even launched the premium service centers under the same brand as a part of this strategic initiative. So the overall lesson that I was trying to say was that, this is how the approach is for a digital transformation. It's not technology-led, it's actually business-led. You have to understand. So many things came as a part of this, wherein, they probably hired an agency to create the brand name, to promote the new brand name, to be able to reach out to customers with it. And then technology actually helped and supported the overall thing. So if there are workflows at the dealerships where, the dealers and the salesmen are moving around with tablets, they would have apps in front of them, which would be connected to a backend. So there would be an entire workflow defined by IT, and all applications would be run at the backend and managed at the backend. So as you notice, everything is going hand in hand between IT and, the business. So I think it's important to understand it from that approach when you look at digital strategy for a traditional business. But there's another question. The other is that, what business will you really be in, in the new digital age? That's another fundamental question that we are seeing, being asked nowadays. And because we're seeing companies globally, transforming the very nature of the business they're actually in. And I'll give a few examples of the kind of things that we're observing that are happening around us. I'm sure you will recognize most of these logos. Now, Ford Motor is actually looking at reinvention from being a car manufacturer into actually a mobility services provider, wherein they're building expertise with vehicle connectivity, mobility, autonomous vehicles, and big data. And they're actually forming a global ecosystem of startups and developers to build innovative solutions. Similarly, Under Armour is actually a sports good manufacturer, which is transforming itself from becoming a provider of digitally enabled health and fitness equipment. Rather than just plain health and fitness equipment, they're being a digitally enabled fitness provider. And we're seeing many, sports goods companies actually reinventing themselves into this space with the help of technology. And likewise, there are many other examples. I put Uber and Uber Eats over here. They are not traditional businesses, but if you think about it, although we know that, you hail an Uber cab, but whereas Uber is actually just a technology services provider. They don't have a fleet of cabs of their own. They're actually just providing the services on top of that. And yet, they're the world's largest taxi service provider. So that is how you need to really think about what business you're really in. And, if it comes to that companies need to really also relook at what business they're in and how can they actually enhance it. Can they enhance existing processes, or do they need to redefine what business they're in altogether? Japan Post Service is another example, which is actually reinventing itself. So there are many such examples that are really, really, out there. Couple of digital technologies to watch. I think on the left you will find that obviously Pokemon Go everybody has heard of, which is the first and the most successful example of augmented reality, and is being experimented with in manufacturing, real estate, and all. The chatbot example I said is actually under the larger umbrella of artificial intelligence and the whole cognitive space. And chatbot is being experimented with by a lot of people. I'm sure many of you would already be experimented, and some might even have rolled out some successful projects. So it's a space to watch. Similarly, there's a bionic ear, which is a 3D manufactured ear, which actually functions better than traditional regular human ear, which is 3D printed. So 3D printers is another area of technology to watch out for. The cloud with the plugs is actually platforms where you have your traditional applications like ERP and CRM. You don't want to give those out and the data from those and open them up. So you use a platform in between to extract data, and then you leverage it to give it out, so that customers can access what you want them to access. And then there is, of course, drones, which is a depiction of robotics, because robots are not just human-looking robots, but actually, machines that can do a variety of tasks. And I believe, Amazon has even filed a patent for warehouses in the air, wherein, you can have drones that are used for delivery of products. And the last is the blockchain, which is another disruptive technology in the making, which will bring more transparency in the financial transactions. So is it really time for digital refinement? I think that's what we really need to look at. And again, these are examples of, there's a, on top in the middle, there's the robot which is used for agriculture, for the farming. So there is e-commerce on the left bottom, and on the right are some of the robots that were actually showcased at CES this year. So I think it's important, that you need to understand what's really happening and what to really do with technologies and how some of the early companies are actually already leveraging them, and keep a close eye on them. You can't really afford to ignore them. So in summary, I'd just like to say that, digital is not just a choice, it's a must. And you need to, understand the key requirements from digital, what are your key requirements, build your roadmap, and make sure it's aligned with your organization's growth strategy. And of course, lastly, be willing to change, explore and experiment, and take risks to succeed in the new digital economy. The way actually digital is moving, it reminds me of R2-D2 of Star Wars, now who seem like archaic robots when you look at some of the robots that have come out today. So that's the speed at which technology is moving. You don't just see, think that these are all fiction, but things are actually happening out there. And with that, I'd like to end my presentation and hand over the presentation to Ramit Gupta. Sauradeep, could you please do the needful?
Sure. Thank you very much, Mr. Anil, for setting up the platform for today's webinar. Now it's my pleasure to introduce you to the next speaker. We have with us Mr. Ramit Gupta, who is Associate Partner, Digital Strategy from IBM, and he will share his insights on what and how the digital transformation will be. Thank you, and over to you, Mr. Gupta.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be on this webinar. It's exciting times, and hence there'll be a lot of interesting conversations which we are witnessing in India and the world over. I think, to be very honest, nobody has really cracked what digital can do. I think there's a lot of discussions and conversations which are happening all around the world, which is good. I can say this with a lot of credibility that these conversations are actually intensifying and increasing as they go forward. I have a very short presentation. I'm conscious of the time, and hence I'll spend more time in talking about the how and what of digital. I think Mr. Chopra has already talked about why digital and that what is really happening in the industry in general. But what does it mean for professionals and practitioners like us is where I'll spend more time. But before I go forward, I had a small, question, a poll question for all of us. So, Administrator, may I request you to please pop that question up so that people can respond. I'll take a quick pause for people to see, to respond to this. So the question which we are asking is digital disruption real? So, I mean, is it more of a buzz? I mean, we have seen a lot of buzzwords in the past, or is it real this time? So that's the poll question for all of us to see. Okay, so I guess what we are seeing is that, of all the people who have responded, by far, everybody is convinced that digital is real. And what is even more encouraging for us is that there are already plans in place, which most of us have, which is amazing. Moving forward on that, I think then this needs no reconfirmation, something which Mr. Chopra has also talked about in his presentation. But we know that there are companies which have scaled very rapidly and they continue to be admired a lot for leveraging technology for the benefit of their consumers. And there are companies which were actually very strong in technology, right? I mean, if you look back in history, Kodak was actually a pioneer in digital photography, but they don't exist to that level nowadays. BlackBerry was considered to be was the safest phone to have. Again, that doesn't seem to be there anymore. So unless one is able to keep track of how things are shaping up, it's easy to be forgotten and make mistakes as you go forward. I think the critical path of all Apple, Amazon, Google, or any other company which you pick up, they encourage their employees to spend a lot of time with their customers, right? They spend time with the people on the ground to really understand what needs they have, and whether they're solvable or not. But there are needs which needs to be captured within the company, and I think that's what defines successful companies from the others. This is something which is more a threat, right? I mean, this is a fact. More than half of the names which you had in Fortune 500 have disappeared since year 2000. So digital is real, and disruption is actually even graver. So unless companies are able to adopt technology or bring about changes which are required, they will be forgotten. And I think we talked about this, and these are examples which we are seeing even in countries like India. I mean, people can argue that India is behind learning curve. It will take some more years for it to go along with the way the trends are in the West. But the entire industry is changing. You see, the transportation has changed, the hotel industry is changing, the healthcare is changing, entertainment is changing. So whichever sector you touch, there are changes happening. And actually, a lot of that is driven by Indian startups. You pick up, any sector, there are a lot of Indian startups which are actually disrupting the value chain, right, and creating new products, services, and most importantly, newer experiences. I think we can't emphasize enough on the experience you want to deliver to your customer or to your employee, right? I mean, a guy who he needs some access to some tools, to some data, all that is available on the fly. So the moment you're reducing the pain of a customer or of a employee or your vendor, you're creating value, and you're co-creating experience which can be monetized for businesses. Coming to the implication for us, which is where I'll spend more time, I had another poll question for all of us. The question which you're asking is, we know that digital is real from the previous poll. We know that it's disruptive. When we say digital reinvention, and that's a term which IBM has trademarked, what is the best way to approach it? I'll give it a few seconds for people to respond to this. Okay, so I think the poll results, the way it's emerged is that of the people who have responded, almost 30% say that it's a business program which requires IT support, and there are another 30% people who seem to be saying that it's an innovation program which needs to be run by the leadership of the company. And there are around 25% people who are saying that it's an IT program which requires business support. Well, there are no right or wrong answers to this, but I think I would tend to agree with what Mr. Chopra was highlighting earlier. And from my personal experience and discussions with my clients, digital is actually is more of an innovation program, because the kind of products, services, experiences which you can deliver using digital, that is not within the realms of the business head. They are not within the realms of the IT head. It requires the CEO and the board's review mechanism and their guidance. I mean, what you can dream, digital actually offers you capacity to dream and innovate, and that's how we look at things. So what is happening in the world, and I'm sure you'll agree, you can argue the intensity, but the drivers which you see on the left-hand side as what's happening in the industry is that because of digital, you have a changing competitive landscape. Who would imagine that Ford and General Motors would compete with Uber? They are, right? Or Uber has a larger valuation. We have all heard about fourth industrial revolution. I think Mr. Chopra was talking about IoT, and this is truly disruptive with what is going to happen. We are now talking about cognitive process systems, which can which can have the basic knowledge, decision-making capability, machine learning algorithms, which can ensure far greater efficiency, either in quality of production or reduction of energy cost, or better reliability, right? It could be any of those things. What digital offers you is what we call as power of unique, right? So every customer, every vendor, every employee is unique, right? We all talk about every child is unique when we talk about education system for him, right? So the moment you are able to tailor your response to that specific individual, and keeping in mind his preferences and likes, dislikes, that's what is happening. And you like it or not, this is a youthful country. The kind of people who are currently involved, the behavioral changes are taking place. When people go for dinner to a restaurant, they still engage on their smartphones. So smartphones, the wearables are becoming part and parcel of our life, right? So because of all this, the way we see things in IBM is that the good old days was that of digitization, right? Where people said that, okay, we'll do some scanning, we'll keep some records. Then people implemented, ERPs or some applications, which was all about digital transformation, which was, optimizing what you do well, and one was looking at processes so that they are best in class, they are mature, they're leading practices. But what is now happening is we are looking at digital reinvention, and that's the way we see it. Because what we are doing now is you're not relying on yourself. There are ecosystem players, there are partners. We need to find commonalities, right? There are things which they'll gain from us, there are things which we'll gain from them. So how can we collaborate, create platforms, create newer revenue models, right? So are we creating data which can be monetized in things beyond it, beyond your regular revenue models? So the moment one starts looking at that, looking at, enriching your existing business using digital, or creating your experiences for people, that's what is digital reinvention. And the reason why that's happening is, as we look at all the new age technologies, and I think we did talk about blockchain, Internet of Things, cloud. Earlier, the organization was the economy was largely an organization-centered economy, right? So it was all about what we will produce, will sell. Then it became an individual-centered economy, which is where we were empowering the customer. He could log on to the website. There were search engines available. He could choose and pick what he wanted, and to move towards a buyer's economy rather than a seller's economy. And there was some two-way engagement where people could log tickets, and then there were resolutions which is happening. But now it's becoming a platform economy, which is all about everyone to everyone economy. And what that means is it needs to be orchestrated. So somebody has to drive change, somebody has to lead the change, and that requires orchestration across all your partner ecosystem partners which you have. The conversation needs to be contextual, right? So nobody wants to repeat your story. So whenever you call your bank next time, you expect him to know the history, you want him to expect what you're calling him for, and the messaging is all contextual. So contextual is what is relevant to me and at the right time, right? So that's contextual. It needs to be cognitive. With artificial intelligence, most of the queries can be resolved with very simple machine learning, big data analytics, and being able to understand emotions, understand tone, tenor, and you may have heard about robots or bots replacing or adding value to call center agents, because anything which is rule-based, as long as you can throw in some intelligence, that can be done through systems with a far more high level of productivity and gains. And it is symbiotic, right? So any of these, when you have an everyone to everyone economy, everybody needs to gain something. So while you compete in some areas, you collaborate in some areas, and that's what is the new age of business. So you pick up any of the platforms you talk about. I think we talked about Uber. Uber is a great example of a platform. You talk about Flipkart, that's a great example of a platform. Alibaba, that again is a great example of platform. So incidentally, if you look at the top 5, 5 out of the top 10 companies by market capitalization in the world, they are actually platform companies. So that's the true power which if an organization goes in that direction, that's where you leverage digital. And that will force you to reinvent yourself as you go forward. So while we talk about large gains and long-term gains, which is a business model being reviewed and rehashed, digital actually cuts across every function. So it's not about B2C, it's not about better customer engagement. You'll gain value from supply chains, you'll gain value from better asset map performance, and these are all empirical evidences. So there are companies which have gained some percentage points. Of course, one can argue that it may take longer, the gains may be lesser or higher. All that is dependent on the maturity of the company and what level of data, etc., is available. But the point which is there is that one doesn't need to think too big. One can start with incremental gains. So the way we see things in IBM, just to reinforce this thing. So this is our standard framework, what we call as a digital reinvention framework. What it really has is 3 broad areas, which is pursue a new focus, which is around what you see in the green color semicircle, where once we have the data or we have some more insights available by digitizing your processes, workflows, customer engagement or vendor engagement or employee engagement, maybe one can monetize that data, and there are new business models which are emerging. Or you can start collaborating with some other partners, and there is a new revenue model emerging. What is fearsome in today's day and age is that if a company has only one source of revenue model. So from a risk mitigation standpoint, it becomes important to be having multiple of those. One needs to have actionable insights, right? And all that is driven by technologies which are there. So it's not about cutting edge technology. I think the most important part is choose what works for your organization. Okay, you don't need to go to cloud if you don't want to, right? If you're very sensitive about customer data, if there are country laws which are forcing you to look at it differently, then adopt other sides of the technology, right? And it's not about technology innovation. It's about bringing the technology together in such a manner that you are addressing the guy at the center, which is that person. Don't forget the human being at the center, and that human could be, as I did say, your customer, could be your dealer, could be your salesperson, could be your transporter, could be your driver, could be your boss, right? So whoever is there at the center, how can you make his life easier? And that ease will come when you're looking at newer focuses, which is pursue a new focus, building new expertise, right? So whenever you're going to build, capacities, or you'll need new capacities and capabilities as you are looking at new revenue models. And there'll be newer ways of working, right? So you'll have you'll have more digital operations. You'll have you'll have more data-driven, design-driven innovations. So you'll be able to design what you want, and you'll deliver that through the ecosystem. So that's the very important wheel which we have within IBM. And how we do this, okay? So when we go about doing this for various clients, and we are doing a lot of work in India for a lot of clients in India, it all starts with an envision session, right? So it's all about ideation. It's not about R&D project, right? It's all about people coming together from cross-functional teams where they sit together, ideate, draw out a journey map, and then see what are the moments of truth or moments of happiness which can be created for the person you are concerned about. And the way we do it in IBM is we use design thinking, and what you see on the right top corner is our design thinking methodology, which is that loop where we start with observation, we reflect, we make, we launch, then we reflect again what needs to work. So and what you see as the yellow color circle is the guy who is the center of all this. So whether, as I did say, the user, whether it's the customer, the dealer, the employee, around which you're building, whatever you're wanting to build. And the three green circle represents the cross-functional teams. So people from finance, from sales, logistics, they come together. Maybe your partners, right? It's worthwhile bringing your customers also. So we do this design thinking workshops, which leads to a lot of ideas, which are captured in that workshop or series of workshops. And of course, it starts with some research which we do with the users in their own environment and things like that. Once we have those ideas, then we run them through a filter of business case, technology readiness, or viability, or the stability of the technology, and what exactly is the user experience we are delivering, right? So across these three parameters, we pick the ideas to pursue, and immediately get into what we call as pilots, right? So create pilots, and then you deliver experience, and then you scale, right? Of course, what is required is that the organization needs to be ready to adopt digital technology. So it's important to have a robust governance program where you are able to quickly have kind of a model where you have ideas, you are building up capacity, and then you're delivering it out. So you'll need a very strong foundation layer across the 7 drivers which we talked about, which needs to mature within the company, and it takes time, but at least the journey needs to start. And very critical is that in digital day and age, we don't have the time and luxury to get into, let's say, defining the requirements. That's what we used to do in good old days, which is the typical waterfall model, where we would spend months and months to capture the requirements, take sign off. Then we would ask for do the product selection, then do that implementation. And by the time you're done, you go live, maybe a year and a half has gone by, right? In today's day and age, it has to be agile. It has to be quick, because you never know whether you'll succeed or not. Okay, so despite all this rigor, please be prepared to fail. The criticality is that you fail fast or you scale fast, right? So it's important to have an ideation, an idea factory, right? So you need a pipeline of ideas, and these are small, big ideas. It doesn't matter. Create what is called a minimum viable product. Okay, so understand what exactly is minimum to launch. Do that quickly. Launch it. Seek feedback, success. If it's working, scale up. If it's not working, kill it, right? So that's the model, which is what drives digital reinvention in a sustained program for clients. any of these digital ideas which we will come across or you'll hear increasingly, can be broadly bucketed into what we call as optimize, grow, or reinvent, right? So if you're focusing on your manufacturing, which is your existing products or existing services for your existing customer, then it's largely looking at your shop floor, product optimization, your profit maximization, cost optimization. All those things which are there are falling in what we call as optimize your operations. If there are things which are being done for customers which are, you're hoping to capture newer customers, you've launched a new product line, you've launched a new channel, you've launched a new market, or you've introduced a new product or a new service which requires new market development or will give you revenue enhancement. And there are things like channel integration or front office digitization or digital marketing, etc. All these are what will be falling in the bucket of growth. And then if you're truly being, disruptive and being a platform business, right, where you're truly driving cutting-edge innovation, and then, by the way, we are doing that for a couple of our clients in India, that's reinvention, because you're truly disrupting the business. So instead of, let's say, charging for a product, if you are able to sell uptime, right, isn't that great, right? You would have redefined the industry, and that's what digital can do now. That's reinvention in true sense. So before I go forward, and I'm now at the fag end of the time which I have, I just wanted to open up the third question, which is all around what exactly are your change inertia, right? So if we have talked about that digital is real, we have talked about that it is truly disruptive, and it's a business program or an IT program, what is stopping you to truly digitally reinvent yourself? What is your change inertia? I'll give it a few seconds. Administrator, are we done on this question?
So the results are on.
Okay, maybe it's not flashing on my screen. No worries. So can you please
out?
Yeah.
Approximately 35% people have replied option B. 27% will be for option A, and 20% approximately for option C.
Okay, so it's largely split, but there are people who are saying there is a lack of technology tools to deliver. There are people who are commenting that there is urgency to act is missing and talent is not available. Well, these are challenges which I would hopefully believe that these would be conversations which you'll carry back into your organization to see how these can be corrected. But let me assure you, the ability to drive urgency is up to us, right? We need to be able to, if we ourselves are convinced that digital is real and disruptive, we have to, we'll do a better job by talking to our employees and our teams and colleagues to get them to act on it. Technology is not really an issue. As I did say, it's not about any new technology. Okay, the technologies are there and they're stable, right? It's all about bringing the right technology constituents together so that we are able to deliver value. So what we do is we are what we call as IBM iX, and as I did say, it's all about building businesses by design. So in digital, it's all about visualization, envisioning, and being able to define what you want to deliver as experience. Then worry about the technology which is required to bring that together. Of course, there are a lot of tools, technology. You'll have various cloud suppliers. You have various DevOps suppliers. You have various analytical tools available. So it's all available in the market easily. But it's very important to have a framework which is to be able to do a lot of observation of your customer, being able to observe your data insights, do multidisciplinary teams coming together doing ideation, and then you work for impact. So this is my last closing chart, just to quickly summarize what we talked about. Digital is real, and India, in fact, is leading the charge. We are the second largest developer base in India, so it's not surprising that we have a lot of startup ecosystems available here. There are a lot of startups, and that's a focus for the country. We are doing real cutting-edge work for clients in India. I can't share a lot of details, but that we are doing, and for most of our global work is also done out of India. Please focus on the experience of the guy you want to work for, whether it's a customer, dealer, employee, colleague, or the leadership management, and then worry about bringing the technology together. Experiences can be even for your factory manager or anybody else inside the company. It is an innovation program, so the first thing which is required is get the urgency alignment done with the leadership, and then maybe set up an innovation council that runs digital reinvention as a program. And it's almost like creating an internal venture capitalist firm, right? Which is able to do ideation, roll out quick pilots, scale the ones which are growing faster, and kill the ones which are not working out. That's the way all VCs and PE firms work. With that, I'm at the end of my presentation. I'll request the operator to take it forward.
Thank you very much. So with this, we'll open it for Q&A session. So ladies and gentlemen, should you wish to ask any question, you may use the chat facility to send your questions to all panelists on the chat section of your web console. Alternatively, you may press 0 and 1 on your telephone keypad to ask any audio questions.
Received several questions via chat. So Ramit, thanks a lot for that presentation. I was noticing some very interesting poll results that were actually coming in, and many questions have actually come up while you were talking about some of the reinventions. And so I'll start off with the first question, which is from Saurabh Saxena, who says, what are the digital frameworks available to check the readiness and effectiveness of a digital strategy implementation?
So there are quite a few of them available in the industry. I can talk about more what we do in IBM. So we have a framework which is called Digital Maturity Assessment Framework, and that's a very quick implementation assessment which we do, which takes around 2 to 3 weeks for clients. It requires a questionnaire which we ask the top and the middle management of clients to execute, and also we have intense one-on-one discussions with the executive leadership to really understand what exactly is the path they want to achieve going forward. So there are many such frameworks available. I'm sure beyond IBM there are many. I think what it really focuses on is, for you to look at digital, are you focused enough on experience, right? Or are you still, as an organization, focused on functionalities? Are you, focused only on one revenue model, or are you beginning to look at newer revenue models? So, are you able to, if you're able to take a decision on a new policy, for example, you want to enhance the credit limit, or you want to offer extra discount for this particular week, how quickly can you execute it? Does it take you an hour, or does it take you a day? Does it take you a week, right? So how responsive are your digital operations, right? So some of those assessments are based on those kind of questions, which gives you a sense about where are you from a digital maturity, and then what exactly are required to be done for you to move forward.
Yeah, thanks, Ramit. The other question is that what is the key difference between digitization and the existing internet-based businesses?
So actually, these terms are, as you know, Mr. Chopra, these are used and misused and overused a lot, right? So the way I see things is that digitization is all about where you have the capability to instead of doing things manually, you're doing it in an IT environment. So even a scanning of an invoice, which takes us back to a couple of decades earlier, or being able to send emails, that's as simple digitization as possible. Most of the internet businesses which are now beginning to happen, and what we call as digital reinvention, is that most of these things are driven by very small companies, right? So what I think is happening in the industry is that the power of innovation has shifted away from large companies. Earlier, what used to be an issue is the high entry cost for technology or being able to do pilot. So the moment you would say that, okay, I need to set up a website, oh man, I need a server, I need some platform, I need developers, and I set up a website. Now you can set up a website in 5 minutes flat, right? And why can you do that is because it's available, right? It's very easy, intuitive, user-driven. You don't need hardcore IT professionals to do it, and that's what is driving the internet businesses of today. So the moment you put all these newer algorithms, newer computing powers, all available on the cloud, on a subscription-based model from a pricing standpoint, suddenly the entry barriers are low. And hence, anybody who comes with a great idea is a potential competition to watch out for. So that's the way I see digitization versus new age internet models.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's a pretty good explanation, saying that technology is now available to everybody, and it's quite easily available. So that's a very, very valid point. And which is why I think innovation is happening so quickly. Just to add to that, I think if I look at digitization from the point of view of, say, maybe converting maybe paper to digital, then that's probably one of the first steps in a traditional organization, and part of IT, where you're actually digitizing a lot of things and then putting it on a workflow. So that's another aspect of digitization. So I've got two more questions which I'll put together because they are from different industries, but I think the implication is the same. So I have one gentleman from the construction industry wanting to know how digital can play a role in his industry, and I have another gentleman who wants to understand how to apply digital reinvention in the manufacturing business. So Ramit, you want to take that up?
Yeah. So actually, this is something which is, what happens when people generally talk about digital reinvention, what comes to mind is that it should be for B2C companies, and it should be focused on internet-driven companies, or CPG and retail businesses, right? But you'll be surprised that within India, we are finding far more traction in the manufacturing and the industrial sector. And the reason why that's happening is because technologies are as we talked about, are easily available now. There are cheaper tools for analytics which are available. And most importantly, most of these companies were always rich on a lot of data, right? So the moment you now mix it all together, and even if you're able to show 1-2% or 0.5% improvement on energy, cost or etc., that's something which can give a huge payback on what you're investing into. And these are all quick wins, right? And it may require analytics, which as a foundation to be created, and then you look at whether you use that analytics foundation for your machine uptime, or you're looking at for better customer service for your sales staff, who's, let's say, they're in the construction industry, who's selling that, maybe that iron bar or cement or whatever the product is, right? So it's the same foundation, right? It's the same analytical tool which you're using. Maybe the use case is different, the data sources are different, the algorithm sitting on top of that foundation is different. But you sweat that in investments across the chain. So the way to really start is, as I did say, first of all, get convinced that you need to act urgently, right? What has happened in the transportation sector can happen in construction, right? Or in the manufacturing sector. Why will anybody pay you a premium for your brand if somebody can buy it from intermediates? So if there is a sense of urgency set up, very quickly get into an ideation session, and most of your ideas may sit around optimization, which is, as I did talk about, some of these incremental cost savings or optimization which you can do. Or it could sit in growth segment, where you're looking at delegating power to your sales staff, to your dealers, to your customers. Or you could truly do disruption. So we are currently doing work with some companies in the auto sector in India, where we are making them more connected, being able to charge per usage rather than per transaction. And that's happening in the industrial sector, right? So it's all about being able to get started, set up a crack team, and move forward is what I would advise.
Okay. And while you were helping them understand about the digital transformation or digital reinvention, I got many more questions. Okay, so to the earlier gentleman who has posted the question again on digital frameworks, I think we have already answered that. However, it seems that you've again posted the question. Maybe we will take it offline and let you know what are the frameworks available, and give you some more in-depth answers on that, because we do have many other questions to actually ask right now. There's another question, I think, which is probably relevant to the one of the poll questions that you had asked, Ramit. That is that what do we do to ensure that the organization understands that the change to digital is really, really required?
Yeah, so the way to try and do that is try and, what we have been trying to do is nothing works better than show and tell, right? So I think there are enough labs, enough ecosystem players available. Ensure that they come over and demonstrate their products and what exactly they are able to do, right? And what happens is, take your leadership team for education tools, right? Take them to companies like IBM, take them to Microsoft or Accenture or other technology companies, and they'll be able to demonstrate and show what all is happening. So we are happy to host. We are happy to do what we call as innovation workshops. We are happy to do digital maturity assessments. We end up doing, building up that urgency to act. And then the way we do that is not driven by theoretical constructs. It's all driven by, live working environment demos, and actually live client experiences. So I think it's important that, you get your team more exposed to the world, because without that, the fear is that you'll be in a fishbowl. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's important to actually look at the demos, because the proof of the pudding lies in eating it. So it's important to actually look at some of those in action and try and do some pilots yourself also internally to really see and show the results of a particular kind of transformation or business. I think that's the best way to move forward. Okay, so another question is about with all this digital transformation, and we've been talking about how technology is not just for enabling business, but it's actually a part of the business. So somebody's actually asked a question about, are we really leaving IT and information security? Are we leaving them behind? And are we really prepared for the future? So what happens to IT and information security is what I could actually gauge from this.
Yeah, so that's a very relevant question, right? I mean, while we are talking about ecosystem, we are talking about being able to share platforms with your vendors, with your customer, and make it more real time and connected. There is a real threat which is there from IT security. But the good news is that that also is becoming increasingly cheaper, and it's possible to act on it, right? So IBM, for example, we are among the leading companies in security services, especially on the cyber security side. I mean, it's actually great news that you have never come across IBM in the news about any data breaches which has happened, because we use our products to secure our own environments, and we are fairly large, multi-country, multi-geography location areas where we work with our clients and our partners. So it's all about being able to look at defining the play you do it, and most of these cloud environments which are hosting your applications and data, they're actually very safe and secure. In fact, sometimes they're more secure than your own premises, because they are fairly hardened. So while it's a fear, and it's a very relevant point, but there are means to counter it nowadays.
Okay, yeah, I think that answers another question somebody else had, that which you actually answered from the security aspect, that somebody wanted to see actually a big gap between digital and security, and I think they wanted to know how IBM fills the gap. So you've already answered that question by saying that you are using your own security tools to harden your own security. Okay, so there's a question on how do you really apply digital transformation for an IT enterprise for its employees, and what are the broad areas that are up for digitization as per your experience?
So yeah, I mean, I think IBM is an IT company, and we are actually using digital reinvention for our own processes. So if you would have seen that IBM itself is transforming quite a bit. So what we have been doing is that we have been looking at various parts of our business, be it, let's say, the way we do our own shared services, the center of excellences we have set up. How can we make it more friendly and better experience being delivered to our own colleagues around the world? So there again, we are applying design thinking to see, okay, how can we improve the processes? How can we make it more intuitive, and reworking on our apps and our workflow pages so that they're better. So we have been using a lot of that. We have been questioning. So one more thing which typically happens in digital is you now have the power to push down decision making, right? So you don't necessarily need to escalate every decision to your leadership, and then it moves down. So we are also leveraging technology to push down decision making and availability of data at the right level, so that the time which takes to act on an alert or notification is reduced in due course. So those are some of the examples which we have been doing.
Okay, I'll ask one more question from chat, and then are there any questions over the voice, Sauradeep?
No, sir, we don't have any more questions.
Okay, fine, great. Then I'll just continue with the questions. Maybe I'll take last two questions or so which have come in, although there are some others. We'll try and address them. There is a question about, let me just open that. Do you think that artificial intelligence is very important and that companies will invest into this technology? Somebody is asking about AI.
Yeah, so see, actually what happens is it's no more a choice, right? I mean, if your competitors are going to use cognitive or artificial intelligence for their processes to deliver better experience to your customer or to your vendor or to your employee, you don't have a choice, right? I mean, so unfortunately, there's no option but to move forward in that direction. What is good is that, there are, as I did talk about platforms, right? So there are technology tools available which you can use. You can start experimenting with artificial intelligence, right? So it's still a science which is evolving and emerging in time, and that's where one should be able to do some of those pilots and see which of them are making sense. So, for example, IBM has its own what we call as the IBM Bluemix, where our Watson product is available on a subscription-based pricing. So you could choose to use various APIs of Watson and see if that's making sense to you.
Okay, and there is another issue that while there are so many digital technologies coming in, how do you really close the talent gap? Because some of these things require additional skill sets, and a non-IT firm that really wants to digitize will probably find it challenging to close this talent gap. So how do you really do that?
Sorry, could you just say that again, Anil? I missed the last part of the question.
No problem. So the question was basically, how do you really close the talent gap? Because in non-IT firm that wants to digitize may not really have the talent required to implement various digital technologies that we've been talking about.
Yeah. So digital is all about ecosystems, right? So I think it's important to get out of the thinking that I have to do everything myself. There are enough and more startups, technology companies available. You plug and play, and then do it in a subscription model. That's one way to try and reduce dependency on inside talent. So you source talent from your ecosystem. That's number one. The second is you still need to enhance capability of your leadership and the operating team so that they start thinking digitally. And for that, what we have started doing is that, again, as I talked about that example of a child who needs his own instructions in his own way and is at the time which makes sense for him. So we have started doing, what we call as capsules for delivery of content. So people don't have time, let's say 8 hours, 16 hours to sit in a training room, and they tend to forget what they've learned in that course. So if you can convert that into 5-minute, 10-minute, 20-minute capsules, and he looks at it 3 times a day, and he gets some incremental capsules, and you can track that performance, that's a way to try and do enhancing the capability of the team. But nothing works better than actually experimentation. So throw in the leadership into leading some of these pilots, let them learn, let them fail. I think that's the best way to do it.
Okay, I think it's been a fairly interactive session. I'll just come to the last question. I think some of the questions that were in between have already been answered by you, Ramit. So the question is, somebody wants to know how can IBM help in doing digitization or in the port industry? Hello, Ramit, can you hear me? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, the voice, the line wasn't clear. Sorry, Anil, you'll need to say that again.
Yeah, so somebody wants to know how can IBM help do digitization in the port industry?
Also, there in the ports, you mean the seaports, right?
Yes,
or the airports?
It just says ports. I'll presume it's seaports.
Okay, so in the ports again, we have been doing a lot of work on so in ports, if it's a cargo or a goods port, or if it's a passenger port, there's a lot of work which goes into enhancing the productivity, the performance, the throughput of the port. It's essentially a logistics and a supply chain business, and there is a lot of work required around the security and safety health of employees. So there are fairly hardened assets and capabilities which we have in that area. What we have been doing is we have been setting up control rooms for clients in that area. We have been able to look at asset enhancement and maintenance of the assets for clients. We have worked on logistics being streamlined and making it better. So there are examples of that work, and happy to take that offline with that specific person.
Okay, thanks, Ramit. I think we'll end the presentation now because we already overshot our time quite a bit, and I think it's been a fairly interactive session. I'd like to thank all the audience for being so participative and sending in so many questions. What we'll try to do is that we'll try and see if we can address your questions offline as well, maybe by sending them to you or email. I think you have registered with us, so you'll have our email IDs. My ID was there in and both our IDs were there in the presentations. So feel free to write back to us, and we'll be happy to answer those questions. And with that, I'd like to end this webinar, the masterclass on digital transformation. I think I'll hand it over to Sauradeep. I think there is one last thing left, which is the feedback. So I'll appreciate if Sauradeep takes it up from here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. So before we close, I would like to remind the audience, we would request you all to kindly submit your feedback questions, which will appear shortly on your screen after the session gets over. And I would like to thank all the participants and the panel members. On behalf of IBM and CMR, thank you all for joining this session. We hope it was a useful time spent with us. Do join us again at the same time on 31st August. Have a great day.